reality check. Reality check, your picker may be off. And so I think this is just such a great topic, so relatable. And a lot of us maybe look at our relationships in the past and say, yeah, that might be me. My picker definitely may be off. Okay. And so we'll discuss that today. Let's pray to get started. And Chanel, hope you are feeling better or getting better. I think I saw in the chat maybe last night that you were getting sick. So I hope you were feeling better. Let's pray as we start off, and then I'll share my PowerPoint as well. Okay. So we ask that you just bow your heads and close your eyes as we pray today, and I'll just set up this PowerPoint while we're doing that. Okay. All right. Heavenly Father God, we just want to thank you so much for all that you do. Thank you for your kindness. Thank you for your love. We want to lift up all of BTM, and Lord, 4 years, um, 4 years in terms of the many years that we will be together and be each other's lives and grow even more. And I just want to thank you. Thank you for bringing hope that seemed dead back alive. Thank you so much for bringing all of us that might have come from different places, but it seems like all of us were wanting the same thing, looking for a different kind or more holistic and healthy form of spirituality, God. Not just one that's cognitive, but one that involves emotion, one that involves the practicality of life. Because it would seem that what we were asking for seemed insane, but in reality, it's exactly what you were calling us. You were calling us to a more holistic, um, holistic relationship with you. And so, God, I just want to just thank you. You are so good, too good. And there was a documentary I was just watching regarding documentary, or rather an interview that I was watching regarding, Richard Smallwood and some of the songs that he wrote. And I was thinking about one of the songs that he wrote, talking about praise waiteth for thee. And we're talking about praise waiteth for thee, that there are praises that are still to come in the future that we have to give you praise for and thanks for. And I thought that was so deep that we all have a praise at this moment, but as time goes on, there's more praise to be given to you because of the future things that you're going to do. And the current praise that we have is what you have already done and what you're currently doing in this season. And so the praise that is still to come, I'm excited, and I'm excited for all BTM because we can participate in that praise that's still to come, and might even realize that there are things and blessings that we might have not realized in the past. So we thank you, God, and help us when it comes to this conversation. Holy Spirit, lead and guide as we look at why we do what we do in terms of relationships and why we choose the people that we do. If our picker is actually off, we thank you. Help us. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. All right. We just let some people on. So is your picker off? That is our topic. A broken picker. A broken picker. My gosh. A broken picker. All right. Broken picker. An attraction to people of the opposite sex that are wrong or bad for you. A woman who keeps dating emotionally unavailable men is an example. If you walk through a room of successful, eligible men and you find yourself attracted to the hunky or misunderstood busboy who just happens to be on parole and technically married, you might have a broken picker. If he moves in with you a week later, you do have a broken picker. Okay, that's just one example, but obviously both men and women can have a broken picker. Consider these questions. Are you experiencing the same problems or feelings that you've experienced in previous relationships? Do you find that you continually pick people to fall in love with or become close friends with who hurt you in some way? Do you find yourself wondering if there are any good ones out there? Number four, do you often go through periods of emotional turmoil as a result of choosing someone who wasn't good for you? And number five, How did I get myself into this? Is this a question you ask yourself? If you answered yes to any of those questions, you are not alone. A lot of people can relate to these feelings. Their personal and professional relationships often are lacking in some way, leaving them to wonder why they end up in the situations they do. They wonder what they're doing wrong.
That's crazy.
Okay.
I thought I was a mute.
No,
Sorry.
that's good. No. You're good. You're good. You're good. I was cracking up. I was like, oh, I see we got a amen section in the room. Come on. That's what I'm talking about. It's a right? Come on. That's what I'm talking about. There we go. Oh man, let me keep going. Let me keep going. Love that. Love that. Comic relief. Here we go. Uh Let me get this comment out the way. But it continues to say here, they wonder what they're doing wrong, why they deserve to be treated in such a way, and if it can ever be done, or if it can ever be any different. Sound like anyone you know? Maybe it's you. You know I'm not trying to throw any shade, but if it connects to you, then let it be. Let it be. Um, and so as we continue on here, what makes a good choice? Some questions to think. What makes a good choice? The truth is that poor relational choices are self-inflicted, but can be changed with a little work. Most people find themselves in one rotten relationship after another and don't stop to analyze why they make these choices. I'll say that again. They don't stop to emphasize why they make these choices.
I don't know. No
They
sé, a
just
veces uno piensa en
assume
eso.
They just assume that they are unlucky and forgets considering there may be a better way to make choices in relationships. Before we talk about choosing the right people, let's look at hurtful selections people make. What makes a poor choice? In a word, character. Quality of someone's makeup determines whether or not they will be good, or in some cases, in a relationship. We are attracted to someone's outsides, their looks, their status, intelligence, personal and professional achievements. However, we experience their insides, their character. Their character makeup of a person determines what they will be like in a relationship. And so, if they do have the ability to do certain things that require good character, then they won't be able to be good in relationships. It's that simple. And so I just want to share the scripture from you. This is from sharing a scripture in some context. This is from Cleansing the Sanctuary of the Heart by our own David and Beverly Solacek. And there's a scripture here. It says, consider the following scriptures. I, the Lord, search the heart. Read that again. I, the Lord, search the heart. I try the reins, even to give every man according to his ways. Jeremiah 17:10. One more time. I, the Lord, search the heart. I try the reins, even to give every man according to his ways. Jeremiah 17:10. I am he which searcheth the reins and hearts. Revelation 2:23. Some lexicons identify the word reins in the literal sense as the kidneys. Figuratively, the reins are our innermost parts. The reins are our innermost parts. The seat of emotion, affection, and motives. In other words, the heart or secret place of man. Also, consider Psalm 51:6. Surely you, that's God, surely you desire truth in the inner parts. You teach me wisdom in the inmost place. It is in the inner parts or the inmost place of man that God wants to teach his children truth. And we talk about truth and not just talking about the truth, like biblical truth or doctrinal truth or, those kind of truths. We're talking about the truth about ourselves. There's a need for both. And so as we go on today, this verse does not refer to doctrinal truth, but the truth about ourselves their character flaws. We just spoke about that in the last slide, and their brokenness. God also wants to teach his children the truth about his passionate love for them, his trustworthy, patient, and accepting character. This understanding occurs through experience, and we experience God is through our right brain or our limbic system. And so we'll stop there on that slide for now, but just want to share that scripture with you. So once again, why do I keep choosing the wrong person? Why do I keep choosing the wrong person? But first, let's start off with the first question for today, and then we will get into that. All right. So as we start that today, let me just share with you the first question, and this will help us start our conversation. I just want to just see where you guys are currently are, okay? On a scale of 1 to 10, I had to say this with a smile. On a scale of 1 to 10, have you noticed that your picker has been off? On a scale of 1 to 10, have you noticed that your picker has been off? Take a couple seconds to think about that, and then we'll go one by one. But on a scale of 1 to 10, have you noticed that your picker has been off?
Quick question, Devonte. Is 10 supposed to be like, oh man, I know I'm terrible with my picker and I really need to like go back to square one? Or is that one?
Yes, 10 is that. And then 1 is like, oh, I got this, handled, my relationships have been going well, and then 10 will be, like you said, 10 will be like, yeah, my picker is definitely off. I mean, 100% off. Okay. Who would like to start us off? I see some numbers in the chat, but I want you to think about, if you're going to give me a rating, and then explain why. Okay. In the meantime, I'll read some of the things in the chat. I will go. I just love that emoji where the guy's like laughing on his side. I feel like I connect with him so much. Let me keep reading here. Let's see. I just feel like I know exactly what he's going through, like what he's experiencing when he does that. So special. Jasmine says 4. Archie says 10. Christy says 5. Okay. Let's see who was first. I see Stephanie, PJ, and then Janice in that order on my screen. Okay. So, Stephanie, you're up.
PJ was first. I'll go second.
Oh, okay, you see that? PJ, you're up. Go ahead.
I like the way Joab put the question in the chat. So my 10 is definitely out of space, man. I think I'm like in Mars or Jupiter. Um, I think, okay, so I would say I don't tend to focus, I don't focus on looks. I don't think it's that. That's definitely not my number one go-to. I do care about personality, but I think maybe so I'm focusing on the wrong parts of people's personalities because I feel like I've ended up in situations with abusive people, stalkers, people who don't know how to communicate, and it's like over and over again, and the cycle continues. It's just like, okay, girl, is it really them if it's continuously happening, or is there something that you're doing wrong here? And I think it all points back to me in a sense, like who am I picking, and why is it that I'm missing this thing over and over again?
I like that. I like that honesty. Let me ask you some follow-up questions. What initially attracts you to them? Like, if I were PJ, right? And I'm like, okay, this kind of person I'm attracted to. What is that thing, or what are those things that kind of like a magnet, like you get attracted to them right away?
Initially, my magnet is somebody who is funny. Like if you can keep like a conversation and make me laugh, yeah, forget it. It's over. I'm a loser for you. I'm like not a loser, but like oh, for you. And then second, if you have your own sense of style, like if you're not like following people's like fashion, like you know how to like clothe yourself and like you stand out and it looks nice, you can, you can dress up. That's like the two main things that I have for me that I look at first. And those aren't really like that important because am I gonna need to laugh every day? No. And am I dressing up to go outside every day? I've been inside for the first 4 months of this year. Why does dressing matter?
Oh man. So last question is, so have you ever been talking to a guy that you weren't necessarily attracted to, or it wasn't your go-to guy, but you realized he was like a decent person or ended up being like a great guy?
Yes, last year and I dubbed him.
Oh, you do? Okay, can you tell me about this story? I gotta hear about this story. It's good questions I'm asking. Go ahead.
I met him on a dating website and he's an EMT now. When I met him, he was still training and he's really nice, a great communicator. He's Caribbean and like he respected like my religion and everything about it. Like we connected, especially with the Caribbean traits and all that. But one, I know like okay, I'm gonna backpedal right now. I did say I don't care about like facial features, but at the end of the day, that matters, just a little bit, un poquito, So that bothered me a little bit, and I felt like, oh my gosh, you're a little too nice. And maybe that's the problem. I'm not used to it. I know guys hear that and they're just like that too nice word. Ooh, I know it's bothersome, but it's just like I don't know. He was too nice, and
Yeah, Ryan turned his head. Ryan turned his
saw
head.
Ryan. I saw Ryan immediately, like as I said it, like. But yeah, that was the situation.
Oh man, I really have. Okay, I have one more question, but you know what? I need to give you a break for a second. I'm gonna put the question in the chat so you can answer in the chat.
Okay.
Yeah. But the question is, what does too nice mean? Like, what does that mean? Like, is he letting you walk over him?
Yes, that's a big part of it. If I feel like I can walk over you, and then also if I feel like I'm walking with you and I know that there's a big possibility that you cannot protect me, that's a
Yeah.
part of the too nice spectrum.
Okay, let's unpack that for a second. Now, when you say doesn't feel like he can protect you, did he do something that didn't make you feel like he could protect you?
No, this is more just on me observing like the type of person he is. I'm just like, I don't think you couldn't save me. You couldn't save yourself. I don't know. It was just like the vibes he gave. He wouldn't hurt a fly. That's what he gave. So it's like you can't protect me.
Interesting. Hmm. Interesting. So you would admit that maybe you were possibly judging.
I definitely was.
Yeah. Because I would love to unpack what that even means. You couldn't save you and stuff like that. But let's talk about that more in the chat. Let's talk about more in the chat. Because if I could stay on that for another 20 minutes. Yeah, Shania. Because what I'm realizing is when I talk to like different people, right? I'm not talking about just BTM people, I'm talking about people in general. They're like people, like multiple people told me, like, oh, this person doesn't protect or this person doesn't do that. But then each person has a different definition of what protection means. And then some people are not necessarily aware of their own bias and what that protection means and what they bring to the table in terms of how they see things, their perspective. And so I was interested in asking you that. Thank you so much, PJ, for that. That was really good. That was really good. Stephanie, I believe you're up and then Janice.
Wow, that's a question, boy. Anyhow, so before definitely I was a 10. But after all the heartaches, I'm a 7 now. I'm very more aware of, like, I'm more observant now.
Mm-hmm.
I watch you very closely. I especially pay attention to your conversation because the Bible does say that as a man thinks in his heart, it's going to come out your mouth. So whatever's coming out your mouth definitely is coming from your heart. And there's something that you can't hide. And one of the things that really would attract me is just manners, you know, old fashioned, opening the door, and those kind of things, being a gentleman. Those kind of things would really attract me to someone. But at this point in time, I still have to work on my trust issues. I have a lot of trust issues, and I'm
Mhm.
very suspicious. Even if you show me all these things, I'm still gonna like, I don't know. Can I really trust you? So I would really have to, you know, go to God and say, God, you know the heart, this I'm seeing this and that, but I don't know. It could be just an act. Because some people know how to act very well.
Mm,
And deep inside they're just phonies, hypocrites.
mm, mm.
So yeah.
Thank you so much, Stephanie, for sharing that, and thank you so much for also being vulnerable about your part to play in the matter as well. So I appreciate that. Janice, you're up.
Hey guys.
Hey, how are
So
you?
I'm all right. I have COVID, so I'm
Oh,
isolating.
hope you
Otherwise, I'm
feel
okay.
better.
I'm all right. The symptoms aren't as bad as it's been in the past,
Okay.
so it's manageable, thank God. But yeah, so I didn't put anything in the chat, but I would say at the time it was a 10, so my picker was way off. This was years ago, but I dated guys who just weren't good for me, period. In terms of what I was attracted to, I'm not really sure because like some of it would have been physical attraction. I never really had a specific type. So it wasn't like there was just one particular guy that I would go for. I guess for the most part, they got along with one group of friends or another. One particular guy that I'm thinking about that I dated years ago, he got along with my work friends. He was a coworker. And so everybody seemed to approve. And, I kind of like allowed myself to connect with him. Um, but yeah, I noticed that after I broke up with him, and he was an abusive person, not physically but emotionally, very manipulative. And because we worked together, I've talked about him in the past, but because we worked together, he was able to kind of like make me see my coworkers as enemies and not friends, and there was just a lot going on, a lot of gaslighting. But after I broke up with him, I started to get close to another coworker who I wasn't friends with before. And lo and behold, she had the same exact personality as him. She was him as a female. And it took me a few years to recognize that. So I think Stephanie was saying, like, people can pretend, right? You can get one particular impression of somebody, and then after several conversations and years of knowing them, realize that that's not who they really are. And I found that that happened with me a lot. So like I was really bad at like judging character in the beginning of a relationship. And to tie things into a nice bow, the female friend and him became really good friends after I stopped being friends with her. So, they found their twin, I guess. But yeah, thankfully, thankfully I am, I was through those life experiences, I now can recognize red flags much sooner.
Hmm.
And so I don't, waste time on things that I know can be potentially harmful. So yes, now I feel much better. I don't know where I would put myself on the scale, but I'm definitely far from 10 now.
Okay. Come on. I love the improvement. Love the improvement as well. Let's go. Thank you so much, Janice. For those that had just come on, I just wanted to let you know the question that is in the chat that we are currently speaking about, just in case you might have missed it. I won't look in the chat because the chat is just blowing up. So I'm going to look in my notes, so that's fine. On a scale of 1 to 10, but on a scale of 1 to 10, have you noticed that your picker has been off? Have you noticed that your picker has been off? 10 is, whoa, my picker is like on an all-time, is definitely off. Okay. 1 is like, no, I'm fine. I'm definitely fine. Looking at the chat to make sure, I know some people had given some scores before. And let me just see here. Y'all really blow up this chat, man. Oh my goodness. Uh Joab, you said 8.4. I gotta pick your brain on this to hear a guy's perspective. So feel free.
Oh boy, I should
Make
have
sure you
seen it
get close to
coming.
your mic. Make sure you get close to your mic too.
I should have seen this coming. I should have seen this coming. Devonta, you and me are like here because I know your thought process. Because how are you gonna say like, oh, like I'm not gonna look in the chat, but you go for mine specifically. You and me,
No,
we're right here. Twin, we're
that's
right
not.
there.
I promise you. I was looking for one of the guys, and you were the first name I saw. You were the first name I saw. I promise
Hey,
you. Don't worry, I'm
so
coming for Ryan too. I'm coming for Ryan too. Don't worry. He's driving, but it seems like his signal working fine. Because every minute he's shaking his head, so his signal's working fine.
oh my gosh. So, hmm. Honestly, yeah. So 8.4, I think is very, very accurate.
Mm-hmm.
Because like I feel like an eight is just, and not to even like talk bad about myself, but I feel like an eight is not. Hmm. I don't think it accurately describes my picker. And honestly, I would even say like my picker, it really is dependent on certain type of emotional seasons that I'm in, I guess. Because for me, like my picker is like it, yeah, there's the physical side of it, but there's also like the emotional, mental side of it as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I say the emotional side, like let's just say like a season where I'm depleted in one area, like I will subconsciously try to look for someone to feed that area.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so yeah, that's why I say like 8.4 because the eight just doesn't like really point to that, I guess. So yeah, I'm realizing now like that's one area where it's like, why am I looking at it like from that perspective? Um, and the more I think about it, it's like, okay, that makes sense because if like I don't see myself growing in this one area, I'll try to see if like I could find that with another person. Um, Spoiler alert, that doesn't work out in the end. But um, yeah, like I think that yeah, I think that's just one thing that like I'm still learning, like how to navigate through.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah,
We read that in a book. That term you said. It's
is
in the
that
book
merger
Sage.
wish?
Yes,
Memorize that term.
Mer- merge it with. As soon as you said like, there's like, because what I got from it, there's a deficit, right? There's a deficit in what you might be missing, and so, well, Jasmine, in terms of a merger wish, I'm describing it now, but a merger wish is basically if you have a deficit that you would hope to have for yourself, but instead of doing sometimes the hard work to attain it and do that personal work, you bind yourself with somebody else that already has it. So it's called a merger wish. And we don't do it like it's not conscious, it's just subconscious, like people end up doing it. So, for example, maybe that wife that gets with the husband or gets with that man that has something that she wants but doesn't necessarily want to attain it for herself, or that man that gets with a woman that let's say she's great at communication and great at speaking up, but he's not. If I get with her, she can do all the talking for me, and I don't have to do the hard work for doing it by myself. And a lot of times people do it subconsciously. So, so Joy, follow up question: are you saying that when it comes to your type, are you saying that the type just depends on when you take a look at yourself? Does the type just depend on what you're missing on in that season, or is it like a specific type no matter what the season is?
I think yeah, it's always a specific type. So like there's certain like physical attributes that I'm attracted to, of course, and mental and
Mm-hmm.
emotional. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, depending on the season, I definitely find myself leaning towards one thing over the other. If that's like where my deficit is, I find that. And then halfway through the relationship, when I get to some type of realization, I like, like I'm not really in a deficit, or I'm not really, um, like I'm not I guess like my focus on like the deficit versus like the actual person, like that's off. Once I realize that, I'm like, oh, okay. Then that's when it's like I guess that realization comes in.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. I think it's definitely more so the physical, emotional, and mental side that's like the most important. But then again, like that depends on like the season I'm in. So I don't know if
Yeah,
that kind of makes sense.
Yeah, I was just picking your brain because when you mentioned, I was like, wait, is it like one specific type, or it just depends on the season and so on? Daniel likes to crack jokes on me. Because one time the time I started dating her, it just so happened that my previous ex at the time must have been singing at some church. Um, and I was just like, oh, this is gonna be interesting. Uh, I don't know how this is gonna go. But anyway, we were sitting down eating at lunch and everything like that. And what ended up happening? So she sees my ex, and I guess she was, and sometimes as guys, I guess it depends on the guy. Sometimes as guys just solely focus on like body, what that body looks like, or others for some of them it might be just a face, I don't know. But each person has their thing, and I remember she saw my ex and what she was wearing, and she was like, "Oh," she's like, "Now I see why you liked her." And I started busting out laughing. But it just shows you like sometimes physically we are into something, but you get to know the person, who that person is. I need to read that. But when you actually see the person is the exact opposite of what you possibly want. Last question for you, Joab, before I go to Arshley to close out this question. Um, last question for you would be: have you ever met someone that you weren't initially attracted to, but because you guys started talking and connecting, you were like we actually are more, you know, balanced in terms of what we like, our values, those kind of things.
Nah, I think the physical is too strong for me to not look over that. If I really had to think back, like no, like the physical, I'm just listen, I'm just being honest. Like I think regardless, the physical has to be there. It has to be there regardless. Um, because otherwise I'll be lying to myself, and that's just from the jump. It's just not even, you know, that's just not true to myself or to the other person. So the physical always has to be there.
You are funny. So that's never happened before. Never.
Nah, I not listen. I even if I think back to even like grade school, like no, like there was definitely a level of interest even in grade school,
Hmm.
and like I'm talking about like 10th grade, like there was definitely a level of interest. So yeah,
Okay. Okay. No, I appreciate the honesty, because I'm not gonna lie. There were like some girls I was like, definitely not. And then I started talking to her, I was like, but dang, like, I may not be fully like, wow, like this girl is like gorgeous, right? But it's just like the person was so great. It's like you started like, have an attraction for them. I know some guys have experiences, others they're like, nah. So I respect that, Joe. I appreciate that honesty. I can't. Jasmine says, man said, I like what I like. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. And that is y'all are funny. Y'all are real funny. Ashley, go ahead.
I was literally about to put my hand down, but you remembered that I put it up.
Oh
So,
yeah, of course I remember. I was coming over there. Don't worry.
oh gosh. I first of all, I appreciate Joab's honesty. I love
Mhm.
that. But what I was gonna say in terms of why I put in a 10, in terms of picking people is because I feel like I tend to pick, for lack of a better word, quote unquote, projects. And I don't want to, I'm not saying it in a way to like say that people are projects, but that's the easiest way I can really describe it.
Mhm.
Like pick people who like that I feel like I can relate to in a sense, like people who feel like that are not in the center of attention, people, in the corner, people that people wouldn't really be noticed.
Mhm.
And I'm also driven by this strong desire for community, the strong desire for relationship, the strong desire for like harmony and peace and for people to be in a good place, that I feel like sometimes I overlook a lot of red flags and I overlook a lot of like visible, tangible evidence for the sake of, oh, but they're a good person, or they have a good heart, or they have the potential to be better. They have the potential to grow. They have the potential to become the best versions of themselves, or to let go of this habit. And I lean on that so much that I ignore the evidence, even if it's hurtful, even if it can be damaging to me. And sometimes I don't realize it until it's too late or too far that I need to turn around or let go of the relationship. And I think the second thing too is because I'm such an emotional person by nature. So if I am caught up with all like the positive emotions and like, oh my gosh, it's so nice to make this new friend or to meet this person, then that makes it even easier for me to like, oh, just hope for the best and just, lean into the positive and not think too much about what could be. I think I'm getting to a place now where I'm learning to use more discernment, but I think that's probably why those are some of the reasons why I'm still at a 10.
Mm-hmm. And I appreciate that honesty. A follow-up question for you is, have you always been a person to kind of look at the potential in people? And if so, like, what does that serve you, like, in terms of looking at the, I guess for you, like, positive aspect of a bigger picture with person?
Yeah. So if I'm understanding, you're saying, do I always look at like the potential within people around me?
Yes.
Regardless of, okay. I
Yeah.
tend to, only because I guess I'm so sensitive to what it feels like to be overlooked or to be dismissed. So
Mhm.
like when I notice that, like I'm just like, okay, like I really want to believe in your potential because that's what I want for myself and that's what I've wanted for myself. So I want that to do that for other people. But I think there's a time and a place, and I feel like I can do that and also maintain boundaries. It doesn't mean that I need to overextend or overcommit or even put myself in a close proximity to the person, especially if the person is not safe or if the person
Hmm.
isn't healthy. So that's something that I am learning. But I think that's why I really just like gravitate to seeing the potential because I don't want anyone to feel left out. I don't want anyone to feel unseen. I don't want anyone to feel, rejected, So yeah.
That's so interesting because I just realized that someone that's overlooked and dismissed can mirror or kind of mirror someone that, is not progressing or does not want to change, right? Both people can be written off.
Right.
People can make judgments about them, but one person is making an advancement or trying the best that they can, or they're very what's the word? They have drive,
Mhm.
while the other person is being written off because they literally don't make any moves at all, and
Mhm.
they're just willing to stay exactly where they are. But I
Exactly.
never realized that both people they can look as if they're in the same state, but it depends on that person what they're willing and what adjustments they're willing to make.
Exactly.
Okay. Hmm. I really so moving forward now. Before I promise this is the last question, but moving forward, where do you find the balance between understanding potential versus just realizing that this person is going to stay in the place that they want to stay?
Honestly, I think it's two-part. Number one is always time. Time will reveal everything.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I think another thing for me too is yes, it's okay to acknowledge someone. Yes, it's okay to recognize their potential. But I also have to, number one, respect myself and also respect them and give them the space and the opportunity to show me what how they choose to maximize that potential. So some people, like you said, they're just gonna say, you know what, I know I could be more, but I'd rather be in the corner and do X, Y, and Z.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas another person will say, you know what, I really appreciate you taking the time to see me. Let me show you who I am and let me show you the efforts I'm making to become a better person. And
Mm-hmm.
sometimes that requires me taking a step back and saying, okay, well, I've acknowledged, I've extended that, whatever that looks like, whether it's a conversation, whether it's, whatever interaction it is, take the time to acknowledge that, hey, I see you, I recognize you, and I appreciate you for who you are. And then be okay with taking a step back. I don't have to necessarily cling and just be there and just hope for the best
Mm-hmm.
and feel like their potential is dependent on my involvement. Sometimes I need to step back and say, okay, let me just see them for who they are and allow them to express themselves. And in that space, also for myself, to allow myself that to go through that journey of figuring out how to interact with that person in that space. And
That's good.
sometimes, yeah.
You said sometimes you will continue.
No, I was gonna say, and sometimes that may mean stepping back. You know, like I said, like sometimes if I realize that yes, this person may have potential to do better, but they are harming me or harming themselves, I also need to learn that it is okay to step back. It doesn't necessarily mean that I no longer see that potential. It just means that there's also a component of developing a healthier relationship with this individual.
Hmm? Come on, these are gems. And I just want to thank you for having the affection to really look and see, what am I going to do differently if I'm, next time in the position. And said the red flags were there, right? In maybe past relationships, but now the awareness for all of us to really look at it. Well, as much as I have hope for this, do I see the red flags? Are they in front of me and not ignoring them? I was having this conversation maybe like 2 years ago with somebody. We were talking about dating reality versus potential, and one of the girls was saying that she thinks about it like this: if you from this day on were not going to ever change in a marriage, and you were going to stay the same person that you already were, right? She said to herself, would I still marry that person? And that's how she thought about it. Like, if you were never to change from this day on, and I was married, from this day on, would I still marry you? And for her, that was a defining moment. That was a defining decision. Because if I don't, then why go through the marriage or the relationship, for example? Um, and then I thought about the fact that even for me, because I was one person that I used to definitely date for potential. Oh my gosh, I was Captain, Sava, and that's what Don used to call me. And it was just like, sorry, sorry. You know what happened? Yeah, you know what I had to say. I didn't finish it. But you finished it in your mind, right? Um,
She used to call you what?
yeah, she used to call me. Yeah, you were Captain. You were Captain Sava. And then she was like, she says, you got to me and you realized you couldn't save me. I didn't need any saving. I was like, I said, you gotta go that hard. You gotta go that hard. I said, oh my gosh. Um, yeah. Yeah. Let me tell you, that one right there, act actually quiet. She a force. She a force. Don't let her fool you. Don't let her fool you, okay? Don't let her fool you. Yeah, so she told me that, and I was just like, what are you talking about? She's like, you have this thing where it's like this one type of girl, like, you find them, or you guys find each other, and it's like you see this most potential in them, and yes, you might be attracted to them, but it's the same kind of thing. Like, you subconsciously try to save them emotionally, and some of them also had, like, daddy issues and those kind of things as well. And it's fine to realize that everybody comes from a background, and you're not writing them off, right? That's one thing. Like, I would date people, and just because of their family history and stuff like that, I'm not going to write them off. I have family history. But when it comes to the point where you're trying to save them and be everything for them of what they lost, like, Christ died on the cross. You're not called to do that, and neither can you do that. And so I had to get a reality check with that, in terms of that. And I had to realize that you don't date, at least for me, right? I can't think for you. This is my personal opinion. It's only Devonte's personal opinion, right? Um, but I believe someone should date for reality rather than potential. Um, and if and consider. So you date for reality, but you consider potential. Date for reality, but you consider potential. What I mean by that is, if you date for reality, that you know of who the person is at this time, right? And their character, all that. Because in the future, when you do get married, there are going to be things that they meet because of the person that they are, but they're going to be unforeseen things that come in the future that you're not prepared for. And because you dated for potential, my mindset is like you're at a deficit with some of those unforeseen circumstances that might come. But if I date with reality, right? I know what this person's offering. I know what I'm offering. I know our deficits and our imperfections, at least from this standpoint. And that person, like for example, Danielle, there are things that were unforeseen that I didn't even think that I wasn't even thinking about. But because I dated her for reality, there were things that came and she was able to handle them and deal with them, and things that I even think would come up even in a marriage, you know? And so, yeah, that's what I would say. But that's my own personal opinion. And if you are dating for potential, well, if you're dating for reality and thinking about potential, is this person even working towards or has the drive towards what they're trying to pursue? Like, I'm not going to tell somebody to marry someone that says they want to be a doctor but just sleeps on the bed all day. That doesn't make any, that's just someone with a dream. It's not necessarily with vision. But if you're, for example, in school and you're working towards, it's obvious, the evidence, right? Check the evidence. The evidence is clear, and you see that person working towards what they're doing, and they just need like a partner, to just help them with just a little bit. Then maybe that would be something to think about, not the other one. So check the evidence. Check the evidence. Anybody that wants to comment, you can feel free to disagree, agree. This is a dialogue here. Yeah. I'm just not into the just dreamers. You have to have a vision with the dream. Or get the people around you to help it make it a vision.
Very well said. I wish I had this about a decade ago.
Tammy, sorry, I was laughing too loud. I didn't hear the second part of what you said. So say that one more time.
No, I just said very well said. I wish I had this conversation a decade ago.
I know. Because let me tell you, like, people really have to, like, a partner. Oh man, like, there's some men out here, there's some women out here, like you guys, y'all doing your thing. Y'all doing your thing. And there's some other people out here, they're not doing anything at all. And they're looking for relationships. You don't need a relationship. You need to be by yourself. You really need to be by yourself. I'm just saying. Don said you out of a job. Y'all are funny. Y'all come with this chat. Y'all are really funny in this chat. Oh my gosh. Hey, I'm Ruthie. Good to see you. Good to see you. I just heard your voice in my head, Aunt Ruthie, when you say, I love you, darling. I love you, darling. I love you all. I love it. I love it. Oh my goodness. Go ahead, Janice.
I was thinking about what you just said about needing a partner. I dated somebody in college. We stayed together for 5 years, and I got my master's. I became a teacher in the time that he was still talking about his dream. And I got to the point where I was like, I'm a professional now. I can't deal with this anymore. So I wound up breaking it off. But it's interesting because like at that time I was thinking in terms of the practical, like this guy doesn't even know, or maybe he thinks he wants to be this, but he's not doing anything to actually become this, person or whatever, like in terms of like a profession or career job, the stabilization part, the financial part. But there's also the spiritual component because, it's not just about having a partner who matches you in terms of their drive or motivation to like have a sustainable life, but it's also like if you're, trying to do mission work or trying to do something that, to serve God, like, is that person aligned with you on that level? Because if they're not doing anything, it's kind of like the same thing as, marrying somebody who's just going to sleep on the couch all day because they're not helping to propel you forward, so it's like you're the one carrying that burden as well. So I think as I've gotten older and since I've, gotten back to church, one of the components now that I look at is their spiritual maturity, because if that person is not actively trying to serve God, and this is for me, this is not for everybody, but this is just something I've learned. It's not just about whether they have the career that they wanted or they're working toward it, but it's also like, are they actively serving God? Are they on my level in terms of what I feel, what kind of spiritual life I need because if that doesn't match, then if we get married, you know, that person potentially can drag me down.
You know, I have a follow-up question, Denise, right, for
Of
that
course
one?
you do.
I know you have COVID. The way you responded to that did not sound like you have COVID, okay?
Listen, I've been getting a lot of sleep for the last few days, so
That was
my
sharp.
brain is
That was
waking up.
sharp. I said, did she even take a breath to even did she take a second? Oh my goodness. So okay, so this is another aspect, and then after this, we'll get on to the why we, we'll go on to the next part of the conversation talking about the broken picker and why we sometimes choose the wrong people. But I've been hearing a number of like women say this, that I want, and you didn't say it quite like this, but some women say, oh, I want my man to be on the same spiritual level as me, you know, or I want him to be, have a relationship with God and those kind of things. But what does that look? I feel like that can look different for every woman, right? There's some women that say, well, he needs to make sure he does Bible study. He leads worship every day or leads worship on Sabbath and, those kind of things. So what does that look like for you in terms of, or be the priest of the home? Like that's language, but what does that look like for you?
Yeah, so for me, at this stage, in terms of just dating, it looks like someone who's daily setting time apart to spend time with God.
Mm-hmm.
It looks like us sharing time, like devotional time, or talking about the word, or engaging in some sort of worship together. It looks like us serving in our churches in some capacity. Like for example, right now he's preaching at a church. I couldn't go because I'm sick, but so like, it looks like him actually getting his hands dirty and doing things for others,
Mm-hmm.
and doing his best to have a personal relationship with God. Because again, I'm not going to ask for anything more than what I can give, but I
Mm-hmm.
definitely don't want to settle for someone who isn't as interested or focused or committed to God, because we go through things in life, right? As we get older, there's like, we go through trials and everything, and those things can really shake our faith.
Mm-hmm.
And so if I'm not with someone now who actively is serving God and who loves God and is committed to God, then there's no, for me, that's where the potential dies. Because then if you're not there yet, you're not going to get there just because we got married. And if anything happens, some earth shattering event occurs, you might blame God for it, and that'll be the end of your spiritual life. So,
Mm-hmm.
all that stuff is at danger. So for me, I feel like I need to start with someone who's at least on my level, because then we can continue to grow together.
Okay. And what happens if there's a season when you're not on your level or he's not on his level?
And that's where the partnership comes in, because
Mm-hmm.
if we both have our own individual relationship and commitment to God,
Mm-hmm.
then when the other one starts to slack, we can pull the other one up, right? That's like the whole thing about being equally yoked.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why that's important to me.
I like that. You made me think about that. Actually, I love that response, Janice. I was just picking your brain. But you sharp. Man, that's you on COVID. I want to know what happens when you're not on COVID. Yeah, I mean those kids in your class, my gosh, they can't get anything past you.
No, they cannot.
I love that perspective. And I think if anything, people need to start, and I'm talking generally now, not to you, Janice, but now I'm thinking that people really need to be specific about, what spiritually or having a relationship with God in a relationship looks like, right? Like, what are the expectations? Because I realize that, people come from different upbringings and, where some people might want every day that they do stuff together. Some might do it individually and do it on the weekends. They might do stuff as a couple, or each couple is different, right? And so you really have to. I think the core is everyone has a relationship with God as Christians, and we're looking for that relationship with another person. Do you have a relationship with God? Do you have your own personal study time? And then each couple needs to kind of set aside what they want that to look like in their individual relationships. And there was one more thing, if I could and then I'll go to the chat. I see some stuff going on in the chat as well. So for example, I remember one time, a couple times, I was doing like devotion with Don, and that girl came for me again. She said to me, she's like, so I'm noticing you like to go for like an hour and go into that. She's like, I only want like 15, 20 minutes. So I was like, what do you mean? Like conversation is juicy and stuff like that. Um, and then she was like, yeah, but we can save it for another time. Like it doesn't have to be all in one, setting. And I was just like, that's good boundaries for me to have, you know. Not going, you can do that in your own personal time, but also setting aside time. Like, how long is this gonna look like when we are in our own, well, when we are together, so it's enjoyable for both people. Let me see, look at the chat. I have a question regarding that. Okay, PJ, go ahead. Oh, and Tanya says, hey, sis, hearing thoughts about that. So I'll get PJ and Tanya. I want to hear, you know.
I didn't. I was gonna save it if I had to for Afterglow because I didn't want to stop the flow of the rest of the questions.
You gonna be on for Afterglow?
I might stay. I might stay.
No, I want to hear the question now because you be skipping out. You be skipping out.
No, it's so important for right now. Say it now.
Yeah.
Okay. So I believe me and Tanya are basically two minds thinking alike across the land right now. So what I'm asking is, if your partner and you are both in a place where you are really down, how is it then spiritually? I'm talking about how do we help each other? Because what Janice was saying is that if one person is not able to do so, the other person is then able to take that extra step in the partnership to help bring their partner up, like to uplift their partner. But I'm saying, if both of us are down, what do we do then?
That's a good question. I do have a response to it, but I want to see if somebody wants to respond first. Tanya?
I actually, oh, go ahead. No, go ahead.
Go ahead. Oh, okay. I mean, I was just gonna say maybe a third party would be helpful in that situation, like someone who both of you respect as a spiritual leader that can encourage both of you at the time, or spiritual leaders, like maybe a small group that you're both a part of, or a leader or counselor that you go to when you're in need.
Tanya, go ahead.
Sorry, I'm like out and about, but I did in those situations what I found helpful, but I wanted to see if what other people have done, to add to my toolbox, so to speak. But I think just being able to sometimes, like even in the Bible in marriage, it says that, when you're married, it's okay to separate so you could spend time with the Lord. And I think in dating, that's a good practice too. It's okay when you see and realize, listen, like I'm in a valley, you're in a valley. I have practiced that, reaching out to an accountability partner or a prayer warrior friend that I have, or just someone that I can feel free and trust to talk to. But sometimes it's also good to just take time alone to regroup with the Lord on one, by yourself. And I think to recalibrate. And I think recalibration, because sometimes when we get so deeply caught up in our emotions as the relationship progresses and gets more serious, it's very easy to lose sight of our own spiritual lives, because you get caught up, if we're talking reality, right? You get caught up with your day-to-day busy thing. And that's just as a single person without kids. When you have a person who is older, has kids, and is dating, that becomes more and more of the reality of the situation, So I have found helpful that in those instances, for me, I like to just separate and say, I kind of need to take some time for myself to spend time with God, because I'm in the valley. I need to recalibrate. I need to be alone with the Lord and just spend some time in worship and just reading scripture, or maybe reading a book that's Christian about a particular topic that I'm improving on. something, but I just need this me time, you know. And I think sometimes we think of me time more like in a selfish sense, like I need time to pamper myself, I need time to go travel, I need time to do this. But sometimes we need to take me time to have me and God time, you know. And I think we come back stronger once we can do that recalibration. And sometimes we learn lessons in that moment that we could come back, and those lessons can inspire even our partner. So that's what I've done, but I wanted to know what other people have done so that I can add that to my toolbox as well.
I love that. I love that, Tanya. And speaking on the fact that, yeah, like even what you spoke on is biblical, you know, speaking with your partner and saying, hey, both of y'all deciding, hey, we're going to take this time to ourselves, prayer, fasting, and so on. I love that a lot. So thank you so much for sharing that. Good to see you. Let me see who else wants to answer that. Who else wants to answer that? Somebody also spoke about the third party aspect, and you have some couples, and I don't like the extremism of how they use this, but there's some couples that they won't even allow themselves to go to a third party when they're going through the darkest moments on both sides. They just suffer alone. And I get not sharing everything about your marriage, but I don't get this whole thing where it's only you two and you kind of isolate yourself from every single person in your community and you're suffering alone. So I always think that find trusted people that get it, like get life, understand those moments of being alone and not going to judge you, and also understand like relationships because they themselves have gone through it, that they have the sympathy and the understanding to be there with you when you go through it. Let me see here. I see Joab there. And the other thing I want us to think about too is if both partners in a relationship are in a dark time. So for example, there are some couples that go through a miscarriage, right? Or they have a child that is born but then dies, and they're both questioning their devotion to God and those kind of things. And it's not something that they can just pray and fast over in a second and it goes away. That it's going to be for a season, sometimes 2 seasons, sometimes 2 years of struggle. If it's okay allowing the season to play out and going through it while still allowing God to get them to the right side of their pain. So just something to think about. Joab, go ahead.
Yeah, when you were talking about like the if both parties are like down and like or one or both are like saying like they don't want to seek a third person,
Yeah.
I've heard that actually a lot too, and it really makes me think, or at least how I thought about it when you were saying it was um just like how me as an individual, if I know like there's an area of my life where that area is down or like I need some type of help, I'm gonna seek therapy. I'm gonna seek some type of counseling.
Mm-hmm.
In a marriage setting, I think kind of think of it like as a unit, as a single. Oh, well, I mean, it is a single unit, right? So why should that not also be the same thing? You know, not seeking a third party, not just for one person, but for the unit, for both. So when you were saying that, I was just thinking like I feel like that does relate to like how like, you should see that as how you would treat yourself. Like if you're,
Mm-hmm.
if you're sick, you would seek a medical professional, or if you need some type of mental guidance, you would seek a therapist. So why not treat that and view that the same way for like a marriage or a relationship? So
Mm-hmm.
just curious about that. Maybe think about that.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I mean, feel free if you want to answer this as well, but a marriage does not mean that you are each other's savior, that you guys get into each other's lives and now you become each other's Jesus, you know? So I think in those moments, there are just some things that we have to allow play out. Um, if we can't hold each other up, then that's why Jesus is there, you know? We're both in this state and it's gonna look ugly, but Jesus is there to hold us up. At least to like when I like to say this quote that when you can't see the light, Jesus will sit with you in the dark. You can't see the light, Jesus will sit with you in the dark. And so I'm thinking about these moments that you're describing where both people are in this state where they can't necessarily lift each other up, but maybe that's the point. You know, emotions, it's not something, or grieving is not something that you can just move in one day. And so maybe that's Jesus telling that couple, right now, you guys are in the dark. Right now, you can't see the light. And so I'm going to sit with both of you in the dark until I can guide you to that place. It's not going to look pretty. During the season, you might not be happy. You know, there's still love there, but it's not going to look as if you wanted it to look. And so you have to grieve those expectations of this marriage season that you were looking forward to, that has not come to become a reality, but I will still keep you. Go ahead, Stephanie.
Yes, salvation is personal.
Mm-hmm.
So before you even with somebody, you have to have your own personal relationship with Jesus. And when you get married, it does really affect, because in my situation, I was more, what's the word? I was more passionate than my partner. And that's what eventually broke everything. It's because I was more into seeking the Lord and, fellowshipping than he was. In fact, every time that I would bring up the subject, he say, "Oh, church, 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 pray, pray, pray." And I said, "But hello, we met in church. We were in a choir together, but it didn't mean that much to him as it did to me." And eventually, like the Bible says, light and dark cannot coincide. If you cannot agree, there's no way it's going to work. And so those are the kind of things that you should see in the beginning. Before you even get into a relationship with someone, you should see where they are spiritually, and that's through prayer and fasting. But most of the time we are so, I don't like to say that word, desperate, but we may be in a situation where you're really like lonely and grieving over a family member, because that's how it happened for me, because I was really in a very low place. I had just lost my mother, and I was an only child, so I was looking for a big family, and he comes from a big family. And so I thought that, yeah, that he could compensate for what I've been missing all my life. And that doesn't work. That doesn't work. You have to get all of your acceptance and satisfaction from God first before you can even look to man. You should never look to man to be your savior, because they cannot be. They will disappoint you, but God will never disappoint you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you so much. This chat's blowing up. The chat's blowing up. I have to go back and go check it out. A little jealous right now because I'm like, oh, it looks juicy. But I'll go back. I'll go back. Anybody else? Actually, let me just share the screen right now, and we're gonna just talk about a couple more things. All right, there we go. Okay. Why do I keep choosing the wrong person? This is by David Lashneer. And so we often ponder why we find ourselves in challenging relationships that go sour despite their initially promising nature. It says here that frequently, we find ourselves choosing the wrong person repeatedly, puzzled by this pattern. Often we blame the other individual, believing the world is filled with wrong people, leading us to think that we should either avoid relationships altogether or just tolerate the situation. Have you ever heard of that, seen that person? They say, well, all men are like this, so I'm not going to get any better, right? That's a generalization instead of realizing that something may be off about the picker. Cindy, is that question for after or now?
Oh, I was just gonna say something about that.
Okay, go
Or
ahead. I'll
maybe I
stop for a
read it.
second. Go ahead.
Maybe I read it wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, but basically, I think, yeah, maybe I heard you wrong. But what I was gonna say is that I've also met people,
Mm-hmm.
like especially my friends, when they get closer to God, like all they talk about is God, which is not a problem. But there are times where like they can't hold down one serious conversation like at all because all they talk about is God. And then
Mm-hmm.
like there's a pride aspect that comes in where it's like, oh, like you wouldn't understand. I'm like, why would I understand? And then they're like, oh, the Bible. And it's just like, okay.
Mm-hmm. No, yeah, I definitely get what you're saying. That's definitely an extreme that people have, and I find it more with people that are just have been baptized. Um, and it's a part of the foundation that they were taught about Christ, and now they're excited, to read the Bible, all these kind of things. But in the development process, sometimes people don't remind them that it's okay to still be human. And so, like you said, all they say is, "Oh, I only have time." Like this guy yesterday, he's a missionary, and I was in the barber, and he was in the chair and said, "Hello, young man. Hello, young man. Um, yeah, I'm a missionary. I come to preach the word of God." He's talking like that, talking like that. And sweet guy, even paid for my haircut, even paid for my haircut and all that kind of stuff. Apparently, like he'll go around and share books with people, preach the word of God to people, give people money. So sweet guy. He's meeting people's needs, all that kind of stuff. Every word out of his mouth is, "Oh, I gotta preach the word of God," and I can't you can't have a regular conversation with him. And it's a reminder for us to find a balance. Like, yes, we want you to be on fire for God. Yes, we want you to talk about the gospel. Yes, we want you to read the Bible, but also you can still have regular conversations about sports or relationships and those kind of things. You know, when you were dying to self, all of you wasn't supposed to die. Your personality wasn't supposed to necessarily die. You know, there's some good things about you that weren't supposed to go to the grave, but we take our whole selves to the grave and only want to just preach. And I'm just like, we need a balance. So I get that. Thank you for bringing that up, Cindy. Um, so let's keep on going here. Modeling of our family. Much as we might have to much as we might have to admit it, much of what we learn about life and relationships, we learn from observing and interacting with our parents, siblings, and relatives. Our parents are the greatest force in our lives because we spend so much time with them that we learn automatic habits that we become comfortable with in life. Though we might tell ourselves that we are never going to be anything like our parents, we frequently find ourselves doing the same thing because it is familiar. There was a quick example. There was a woman in the book Safe People. In the book Safe People, the author talks about a woman that said that all of her relationships are like living in hell. All of her relationships are like living in hell. But the author, John Townsend, simply says that people are willing to live in hell. People are willing to live in hell because they know the name of all the streets. People are willing to live in hell because they know the name of all the streets. They are comfortable with what's familiar. Okay? So if you realize, Dad, my life in terms of relationships has been a living hell. Well, some people are willing to live in that hell because of what's familiar, because they know the name of all the streets. Yep, the devil you know. It says that these familiar habits have become automatic. And we are a people who find comfort, okay? We find comfort in that which is known and automatic. For young girls, it is not unusual for them to find themselves in relationships with men who are similar to their fathers, because these are the men who were their first practice people. Further, if the fathers were alcoholic, abusive, controlling, yelling, etc., the young girl automatically gravitates towards similar types of personalities almost unconsciously. Though parents may say, do as I say and not as I do, okay, it is not unusual for children to do exactly like their parents. For young boys, we did not leave you out. They also become like the men in their lives and relate to the woman in their lives like their father related to their mothers. Whatever one has learned to expect from their families is what they will be doing for most of their adult life, even if they try hard to avoid doing it. It goes back to, I want a girl like the girl that married dear old dad, and vice versa. Let's keep on going here. Our dependency needs is another factor. What we many times hate to admit is that we have many dependency needs. We want to be taken care of and feel that if we find the right one, our lives will be complete and we'll be safe. Sometimes there are people who have more dependency needs because their past needs were unmet, and they are hoping that the new relationship will meet all of those needs. I'll let you know today that it's not fair for the current husband or the current boyfriend or girlfriend or the future girlfriend or boyfriend or the future husband and wife to try to meet the needs that the father or your mother did not simply give you. You have to simply grieve that. And so what they're responsible for is contributing to your needs in the present and also the future. But if you're trying to make them rewrite the story of the past, that's something that you better stop right now, because that's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. It's not fair for them to do that. It's a shame that anybody had to go through that here. But it would be a shame if somebody else has to work an entire lifetime to redo the wrongs that they never gave to you. As we keep on going here, it is more of a hope of facing the realities of life, the struggles, the problems, the difficulties that must be faced by all of us in life. There is a hope that the other person will take care of them, protect them, and make everything wonderful and safe. When this does not happen, they're confused, depressed, anxious, upset, angry, and lost. Mostly, they are upset and lost because they have never learned to function for very long as an independent adult without having someone to rely on. Our expectations that we can change them. Here's another one. An unrealistic expectation that many people have, particularly women and of course men, it's not just limited to them, is that they are going to be able to change the other person once they are with them. This unrealistic belief denies the concept of what you see is what you get. And if one mate tries to change the other one, resistances are usually set up and more conflict arises. Side note, I was thinking about this. I wonder if the whole project mindset is simply about, and now speaking generally, is simply, I have been speaking generally, but I'm definitely speaking generally with this one. If people are taking on projects, I wonder if that is a person's way of making sure that they can get a positive response or a desired response out of a relationship. For example, if I grew up in a family environment where, because I was a child, nothing or everything was out of my control, then maybe growing up, one way I definitely want to make sure that everything is in my control, as if I take on a quote unquote project. And guess what? I am quote unquote the manager, the developer. I get to control all the rules. I get to make sure that this person is molded into what I want them to be subconsciously. And then that way, my expectations get met. Now, this ends up not working, but you can see how this can be very damaging and how people can do this subconsciously without even realizing it. So, further, if one tries to change the other, the relationship becomes unequal. The one needing to be changed is no longer a real adult, but just another child who needs to be raised in the right way. Similar to what we were told or how we felt. There is also the 10% intuitive rule that is ignored. This rule states that if you see a problem now and think that it is just a small 10% one, be assured that it will be 10 times worse when you are in the relationship. Okay? Let's keep on going here. Our failure to notice and our tendency to deny. Our failure to notice and our tendency to deny. Many times we hear couples talking about how the other person changed so much after the courtship. It is true that we do tend to put our best foot forward in the early courtship. This is why it's so critical to have extended courtship in order to get to know the person over time. However, it is equally true that we tend too easily to overlook, deny, avoid paying attention to the problems that are clearly evident from the beginning of the relationship, only to later be surprised by them. Further, we will refuse to listen to what others have to say about the mate, the other person, believing that the information cannot be true about the other person that you know. Our being in love tends to cloud our awareness about the realities of the other person. And so the natural body opiates, endorphins are drugs that can make us feel good and are excreted when we are in love. So being on drugs is hard to understand. Feel or experience the real other person because we feel so good with them. Almost done here. And then our need to pick what's familiar. This is very self-explanatory, but some of the reasons why we pick some of these people is because of our low self-esteem. Never grew up really with high esteem growing up. And so you only have one expectation of what you could ever get in a person. So if I let this person go, there's a fear that I'll never get not only a better person, but I'll be alone for the rest of my life. These are what's going through some people's heads. And then familiarity. Some people end up marrying this person, right, that reminds them subconsciously of their mom and their mother and their father. And they don't realize that they're trying subconsciously to redo the past with this person, hoping that they can heal what they didn't have with their mother or their father. And they still end up, in the end, disappointed. And we spoke about our fear of being alone as well. And so I'll just end right here with this portion. A real problem is the one of a fear of being alone. Many times we will enter a relationship because we do not want to be alone and are fearful of being alone. We also have not had the experience of living alone and learning how to survive alone for a significant period of time. Then there are some people that they would rather be in a relationship than to be alone with the person, not realizing that they may have had many people in their household growing up. They may have had many friendships in their house, friendships around them. But even with all that, they were still alone because the people did not know how to fully love them. And so many people move quickly from one dependent relationship, the family, into another dependent relationship, the marriage, because they do not want to tolerate struggles, aloneness, anxiety, and other emotions, even though they're going to experience these same things in the dependent relationship that they're rushing into. Many other fears and problems drive us to the wrong place. Sometimes it is that we find ourselves in the wrong relationship and just will not admit it or are afraid to just leave it and go on. Whatever it is time to slow down, give yourself more time rather than jumping in where fools tread. Okay? Dread, sorry. We're going to stop right there for right now. But we want to get some of your feedback. Anything come to your mind? Anything come to your mind? Any of these reasons really connect to you in terms of the reason sometimes why we get inside these relationships? And one last thing, I was thinking about this that came to my mind. Some people might say, well, no, I didn't date the same person. All the people I dated were different. You know, they were different. They have different toxic people. This one didn't have vision, or this one emotionally abused me. Whether you were dating the same person 10 different times, or you were dating a different person that might have been toxic or not good for you, what is what is uh what is the common denominator is the fact that we are simply dating people that will never know or learn how to love us. Okay. Ruthie, go ahead.
Morning, precious.
Morning, Ruthie. How are you?
Good afternoon. Sorry. All of you, my precious, precious children. Wow, this was really something, you know. You really made me, as usual, introspect. And you know, and I'm sure you're aware of this, but the older you become, the less choices you have, right? And I've been looking, for some time now, I've been looking at the people that I chose in my life, or that came to me, and I accepted to be in relationships with them. And like I told you, then I ran. And when I look back, these are all good men, good people. But I was afraid to, and this is so true, Sunflower. I was afraid to give in or to give myself to another person for fear of being hurt. You know, not necessarily that they were going to do it, but just in case they might, let me run. You know?
Before they do.
Before they do, you know? Or even after they run further away from them, you know, that type of thing. So I was wondering if it was the picker that was off, or just, you know, that being afraid of being with someone who is really a healthy or good person to be with, you know. And then you know, when you've gone through trauma in your early life too, you know, that's a part of your life that you couldn't control. So then you make sure that you don't experience that trauma again by running from it. So you've really made me think.
Yeah. And I think for you, it may not be so like so much of the picker being off. It's more of no, there were good men that came, and the feeling of maybe care and love, or the healthiness of it, it just scared you to death, because we could want this stuff deep down, but our experiences can make us feel like, well, I've never experienced this before, so can I even handle this? Am I even deserving of this? And we have this thing where, well, if somebody learns who I really am, then they may not stick around. Right?
They would love me when they find out who I really am.
And we sometimes think this way because, well, if the people that were supposed to love me in my life didn't give me that care and love, why would anybody else want to do that? You know?
And also, if you feel like you're not enough. For example, oh, there are these wonderful people that are interested in you, but can I keep up with them intellectually? Can I keep up with them in any way? Maybe I'm not good enough for them, so let me shrink into myself. You know, shrink back, let me pull back, because that's the safest place to be. Meanwhile, you can't really grow because you're not letting yourself experience.
Mm-hmm.
So this person can pull you up, but you're not, because you're stuck in those feelings of I'm not good enough. You're not letting them pull you to a place to the place where you really want to be.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I
Hiding.
think, oh, go ahead, Arunti.
No, I was saying you're hiding.
Hiding, exactly. So last week when I had preached, and it's so crazy you bring this up. Last week when I had preached at this church in Lansing, Michigan, there was a rap session, a real talk session. Let me just call it that, because I don't rap. And some of you guys will probably laugh if you just hear me rap. I feel like I might have a future. You never know. You never know. You know. But anyway, I went and we did a real talk session, and we had there was a good amount of young adults there, but they were going through a lot of experiences in Michigan area, and some of them had kids for a while. But I'll say this: one of the things that came up in our conversation was the fact that I remember one of them speaking the fact that she had a good guy, and she was kind of still harping on the fact that because she wasn't ready back then, that she lost out on her opportunity to ever be happy or be in love or be in a relationship. And I remember thinking to myself that just because we were not ready back then and the timing was off doesn't mean like Christ is writing us off. Like we almost make it seem like we were trying to not be loved on purpose. Like that there's grace in the fact that a lot of us were given distorted love, and now Christ may have given you a person in the past that you could say, wow, like that person was loving. But it wasn't to shame you or tell you this is your one chance. You don't have any more chances again. Maybe that opportunity was to show you, hey, I'm showing you that this may not be the person you're going to be with, but I'm showing you it's possible that someone can love you. Let's start there.
So Devonte,
yeah,
how does one relax enough to be
Mm-hmm.
open for that type of thing? How does one relax enough? I mean, yeah, we're doing the work, but there is still that trepidation there that, wow, I know I'm good enough. Or maybe we're not convinced. And I'm talking about me, maybe not convinced. I know I hear it. I know I see it, but I think that the trauma, whatever happened, and even though I've made light of it, because I've made light of the trauma,
Mm-hmm.
but it was so strong that there's this mark or
Mm-hmm.
wound that I venture to say can't heal because it's just so, it's just so intense. And so try as you would to relax enough. And I know I'm not the only person that goes through this, to
Mm-hmm.
relax enough to let that person come in. It's almost, it's really hard.
I don't think it's going to be something done overnight, but I think little by little, if a person's able to realize, okay, first, God showed me, you got to reframe it. So first step is God showed me that this is possible. There are people out there that actually want to love me. I just realized I'm not there yet. Then we allow ourselves to be a little bit more vulnerable and experience another person that comes into our life to love us. And then we simply say to that person, I'm seeing that you're loving me in a Christ kind of way, and I appreciate it. But some of my downfalls, the fact that like I have some insecurities. I'm not there. I think if we're more open about that. So I was noticing even in some of my past relationships, and Danielle to be specific, that sometimes that came up like, oh, I'm like this thing of I'm not good enough, right? Or I'm not good enough to be in this, and it's up to, like, for example, in my case, it's up to the guy to be considerate enough to meet you where you are and give you that reassurance. I know you feel like you're not good enough, but I'm telling you, you are good enough. And I'm not going anywhere. And I feel like when you say things like that, you give that person reassurance. Now, I tell that person at the same time, I can say all this, and I will continue to give you reassurance, but you have to do the work to actually believe it. I'm not going anywhere. I'm staying right here. You see me. You see my body. You see that I have not moved, and I'm here for the long run.
It feels like all those men are already with their somebody.
And I don't think that's the case. I think there are others out there, but we have to be open. But if we write it off, then we could be blocking our blessing for those that might be interested. There's some good men out there. I'm not saying all of them are. But there's some really messed up men out there. And I'm like, and if I know they messed up, I'm not telling you about anybody I know, because I know you're a dog. Why am I gonna give like a dog to somebody that I actually care about it? I wouldn't give you to my worst enemy. So I'm not, but I guess what I am saying is that there's a space for us to grow and to realize that we should be loved and cared for, and have an openness toward actually believing that Christ can give us someone. But if we already closed off our mind already, then what is Christ going to try to give you? Because your mind is set that there's nobody out there. So Tanya, go ahead, and then Stephanie.
That's why I love you so much, Devonte. You're awesome.
I love you too. I love you too. You're just making me smile. You keep doing this. You keep doing this. You can hear me? You could hear me. Let me see.
She said in the chat that she had to go.
Oh, her face is maybe she pressed that by accident. All right, go ahead, Stephanie.
Woo! Oh my gosh. Everything that was shared, it was like looking in a mirror. And I realized that most of those was my issue. That even though I wasn't raised by my father, I didn't know who he was. I ended up marrying someone like my mother, because that was my frame of reference. That's all I knew. Someone who was a workaholic and very unavailable. Every time I would try to talk to her or have a conversation with her, she wouldn't have time, for me. And I ended up marrying someone who was just like that, who unavailable and was a workaholic. And yeah, it really matters what you see as a young person. It does influence your choices and how you relate to people. And I know that because of the things that happened to me, I did have a lot of low self-esteem. I never thought I was good enough for anybody. And I basically settled for the first person who gave me attention, which I never got. And the one that I was supposed to get attention from. And then because all I was told is that my father left. So I always had that fear in the back of my mind that I don't want to do anything for this man to leave. So I would just put up with things that I should not have put up with because of that fear of being left, of being abandoned as my father did. So yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Stephanie, for being vulnerable and sharing that. Anybody else?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I was very distracted earlier.
No, it's okay. I was just like,
I lost
wait,
my Zoom
she's still
tag.
there. I saw her hand. I called on you though. I didn't forget.
I was gonna hang up, and then Ruth dropped that bar. I was like, whoa, wait, that was intense. I can relate to that. And one thing when you said, sometimes when you've been so traumatized, right? Like even if the person comes and says, I'm not going anywhere, I'm right here, and they reassure you, that can come across as spooky to you. You're like, whoa, now that's freaky. You're not going anywhere? What do you mean? So like I can understand, like when Ruth said what she said, to me it's like when you're so traumatized, it's for me the struggle is so much realer, because it's like damned if you do, damned if you don't, damn if you hope, damn if you don't. And it's just like, I don't know, it's just like, because I've been, I'm trying not to reveal all my business before I'm ready, but I'm just
You are making me laugh.
But I'm just saying, sometimes you could be dating a person or getting to know someone, and their perseverance, they see more in you than you see in yourself, right? And they could be giving you all this reassurance, but it freaks you out. It scares you off. It scares you away. And so when they give you the reassurance, the trauma will cause you to push away more and wait longer, which I'm finding that time is my best friend, right? Because over time you see all things, and so yeah, that really hit home, because I heard what he said, but I also heard what you said, and I said, when you were saying that, I was like, that could be scary too. It's just like, what do you mean you're not going anywhere? And sometimes, oddly but true, that can subconsciously make, like, bring out more of the worst of you in hopes to push them away. And I think it's called like self-fulfilling prophecy or something. Something wish something. But yeah, and it's just like almost like your subconscious wants to test this person, like, oh yeah, is that what you mean? Well, take that. What do you think about that now? Huh? Are you still gonna stick around? So I'm just being real, like you hit me hard, but Ruth hit me hard with that. I was about to hang up, and I said, "Whoa, I need to stay on another minute. Hold on." And so that's the trauma I'm going through. Like I after when I thought things were going great, and it hit me hard that it didn't. I was like, I'm staying single. I'm gonna talk to all these people who aren't. They're all my friends. I can have as many friends as I want. And I'm going to get to know all these friends at the same time. And when I feel that this one person is worth it, then I'll, kick everybody else to the curb. But even still, as much good as you want to come out of that, it's a mental battle, and it's also a spiritual battle, because spiritually you're trying to claim all the goodness, right? To do and trust in everything that is good, that is right, that is pure, that is loving, that is just, that is kind, right? But then your trauma or your subconscious kicks in, and it battles with that, right? And so that's why, before I was signing off, I was like, I just pray that God continue to all make our discernment more sensitive, so we can all be better pickers, and know when God is picking or bringing us a few that would be good candidates, and be able to pick from the good bunch.
Absolutely. You definitely, and you're so right. The self-sabotaging that we will do because somebody is saying, oh, they're gonna stay, like, just to make sure we push them away. That is so real. Oh my goodness, that is so real. Thank you so much, Tanya, for speaking on that. And even so, let's say there's one partner that is with another partner that might be trying to self-sabotage, that is just running because they've actually experiencing a healthy kind of love for the very first time, right? That partner still has a choice. Now, you could say, okay, I've been going through this a number of times, and this person's not ready to be in a relationship. or they're not to the point where they're ready to get over self-sabotaging. Maybe they still need some more time, right? And you may decide to go your separate ways. Then there are some times where, for example, like I think with Dawn, there was one time where she would say, "Oh, let's go on a break," when we were dating and those kind of things. And it wasn't because it was because of trauma, you know? But I decided, well, this let's go on a date seems different than the others. Others, it was like, okay, we're obviously in a toxic relationship. This one was like, no, it was something that I need to fight for. And I need to kind of stay around and be like, no, we need to work through this. And I think it's the partner also has to be, it's important for them to be emotionally healthy, so you can recognize when it's time, quote unquote, to end things because things are completely toxic, or when it's time to continue something despite your partner telling you that they necessarily want to break up or they don't want to do this anymore. You have to start to have this discernment or this sensitivity to know when somebody is just trying to run away because they're not used to a healthy love that you're trying to give them, versus someone that just wants to break up because things are just simply toxic. I think there's a difference between those two, and we have to learn into learning the skill how to navigate both of those, if that makes sense. So yeah, anybody else? Oh, go ahead, on Ruthie.
Ooh, this is really deep. I've been struggling for the past few weeks with this intimacy issue, and I'm finding that it spills over deeply into my spiritual life. Maybe they're one and the same thing. I'm not sure. So here it is, a God who is so amazingly loving and so giving and not trying to hurt me, but it's so hard to totally surrender to him because it's so unfamiliar to be loved like this.
And what scares you the most?
That he won't be there sometime, even though he says he will, that there's going to be a time when I need him and he's not there. But that's not the reality. And I know this intellectually, but not completely in my spirit. So I didn't realize that I've been avoiding him on certain levels because it's just been too hard to think about him not being there.
A follow-up question for you, on Ruthie, is, have you come to the place where you've experienced God in the moments of your deepest pain, in the memories of your deepest pain?
Absolutely. Absolutely. But I always revert to this place where there's going to be a time when I need him and he's not going to be there. I mean, and it's amazing because daily he's showing me himself. I mean, and in ways that, I'll do some stupid stuff sometimes, forget things that are so important. And he shows up and shows out. And I know he's going to show up and show out. But then in the back of my mind, there's something that says, there's going to be a time when he's not going to be there. And it's not necessarily because that's not his nature, but that's just the fear that's there.
Follow-up question to that. What's going to hurt you more? And this is a pick one or the other. Is it going to hurt you more to let him into those most precious areas of your life that go untouched? Is it going to hurt you more to do that? Or will it hurt you more to shut him out from those most painful areas of your life?
It hurts more to shut him out. Those are no-brainers. But somehow I'm still running. I still got my track shoes on. Oh my Lord, help me. Got the track shoes on. So y'all pray for me.
I'm wondering even if those areas that you say are go untouched. I'm wondering if even if you start with one fact or one aspect of that, those memories that you leave untouched by him. I'm wondering if you can start there. You don't start with the whole story, but you start with.
What do you mean?
So you said there's some areas that you're kind of like, I don't go to God with. Is that what you were referring to, or?
No.
Okay.
It is that I have this fear. I don't remember what I said before that makes me think that, but it's that I have this fear that I think it goes back to the not good enoughs, even though I know I am enough intellectually. Maybe I'm still not feeling that way. And I'm feeling like, he's gonna say, let me just leave this child alone because, I'm not getting what I need from her. Yeah. That is, and I don't know how to explain it. I just feel unworthy, I guess it is. Unworthy of his love, and spilling over, unworthy of any love.
But you still go to him.
Absolutely, because there's no place else to go. There is no place else to go. There's no other, but there's still that nagging fear underneath that, one day he's not gonna be there. One day he's gonna
I'm
walk.
interested. Okay, so in the moments that you do go to him, that you have gone to him from the past up until now, do you record how he receives you?
Probably
do you write it down?
Not always. No.
Yeah, because I'm wondering if you start to write it down, and this will be you recalling how your loving Jesus responds to you in your deepest moment of pain or your deepest memories. Maybe you can put them up on the wall, put them in a place on the fridge, so that even when that feeling comes, the written down memory or the thought tells you, I know my mind went there. No, my mind went there, but the evidence, like for me, because those thoughts, they might decrease, but sometimes we deal with that for the rest of our lives.
Okay.
But for me, I would write down in those deepest moments of my life, what was God's response to me? Was it care and love? And I would simply I would simply title it, check the evidence. For me personally, I would title it, check the evidence. Because my thoughts are saying one thing, but the memory of what I wrote down it's sketched in history. That's the evidence. So wherever, I know you love music and everything, whether that's your piano or whatever it is, your keyboard or something on the wall, when you have those memories, go back and even think about the memories you shared with him, write down how he received you in those moments.
Yes.
Yeah.
This is really deep, Devonte. It's really, really deep because you'd think that you've overcome these things already. So let's move on to something else.
Yeah. But what is overcoming though?
Overcoming is, well, in this sense, it's passing the test. And so you move on to something else, which is maybe not as emotional, or maybe I don't want to deal with the emotions, maybe that's what,
But
now let's get back to life as usual. My life has been interfered with by these emotions. I've dealt with the emotions. So now let's get back to life and living.
Oh, so you dealt with it. So now let me put it off to the side and continue my life. And it doesn't work. It doesn't work like that. It doesn't work like that at all. Because those same emotions, the negative aspect of them, to ignore all of them would mean that we would ignore the blessing that some of the emotions gave us. It's like you're throwing out the baby with the bathwater. If we just say, let me put these emotions to the side, we have to be so careful, because throwing out all of the emotions, yes, you threw out the negative, but you're also throwing out the positive experiences of it all.
But Devonte, it hurts. It hurts. These emotions, they really hurt. You know, it really hurts to deal with them over and over again. It's almost like rehashing something, or, well, maybe they haven't been completely dealt with.
And I'm also like listening to what you're saying too, and I'm wondering if it's just a redefining of what it means to have gotten over the hump.
Okay.
Right? So when I think about healing doesn't necessarily mean that the negative feelings will totally go away. I never have to deal with them again. It doesn't necessarily mean that.
That's what I think it means.
Yeah, but it doesn't.
But I want it to mean that.
You want it to mean that. Oh my goodness. I know you
want to deal with those feelings. I don't want to deal with them. I don't want. I just don't. I'm being honest with you. I don't want to deal with them. And
I think that's real.
I have to. I know that now that I have to, but I have been running. Again, I have been running. I've been running.
Yeah, I don't think anybody says, oh yes, I can't wait to experience these emotions and feelings. Bring them over to me. Let's go. You know, I don't think anybody says that. I think over time, though, it's not so much anybody wants to deal with these negative feelings, but I guess what I'm asking you to do, and I want you to pray about it, is thinking about the positive aspects of the positive outcomes of what God has given to you in terms of dealing with those emotions. And what I mean by that is, we're going to deal with the positive outcomes of what God has given to you. Now you have memories of God being in those deep, painful moments of your life. That's a benefit. That's evidence, right? Now you have a community that you allow to love them. You say that you don't want to deal with the feelings, but you trust us just enough. You trust us just enough to allow us to be there in the moments of your pain, to share your life with us.
But Devonte, when I start talking, I have no idea that they're going to come out.
But you do it because you feel what?
It has to come out. It has to come out.
It has to come out, but you also do it because you feel...
I feel comfortable. I do.
You feel safe.
And I feel safe, but I also feel that I talk too much. I do feel like I talk too much. So yeah, healing is a process. Yeah.
It's a process. I think what makes it easier is if you have to, I think for you have to literally sit down and write down, what are the benefits that I have received, or what's the evidence that God has been there, because then you can at least weigh out, you know.
There's so much though, Devonte. I would be writing a book. You know,
well, maybe you should write a book.
Oh no, we're not gonna go there.
You have a lot of evidence.
A lot.
You have a lot of evidence. And I just want you to, I think it's been so painful. And remember, I can never say I walked in your shoes. I can never say I ever walked in your shoes, of gone through what you've gone through. What I'm simply asking you to do is, what will be beneficial for you is to look at all the evidence. not just the negative ones that you remember and experience, but look at the positive parts of the evidence and see if what you really believe is true. You know, if it's all in here and you don't necessarily write it down, then your mind can continue to kind of warp what God has done for you.
Okay.
But last thing I'll just say is this: growing for me is not without still having some negative thought from time to time. You know that I know it doesn't seem like it, but I sometimes feel like, oh, let me shut up. Let me make sure I only speak this amount of times. You may
You
not see
better
it now
not.
because,
You better not.
oh, but you got to be telling yourself that.
Well, all I know is that you better not stop talking.
And I would say the same thing for
That's
you.
You're such
I
a
would say the same thing for you.
Yeah, I guess so.
You guess so, you know so.
I guess so.
Oh yeah, keep the same energy, right? Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness.
All I
Too
know
much.
is that I love you all so deeply because you put up with my insanity. And you know, I love you for that, and I love you for sharing and everything like that. That's what I know, you know.
You know, we're not on Ruthie. We're here not because we think we're keeping up with your insanity. You're not a burden to us. We're here for you because we love you for who you are. We simply love you for who you are. We wouldn't have you any other way. Now, everybody here is convinced on how awesome you are.
Wow.
Now you have to believe
what
it.
you're talking about.
You have to believe it now.
That's true. That's true. Yeah.
I want to share this with everybody before we go to Afterglow. And this is entitled The 4 Principles for Choosing the Right People. 4 Principles for Choosing the Right People. And on even a church family, you know, connection checklist, I would say all these things are things that BTM have. But obviously we're talking about relationships today, so you think more specific. But 4 principles choosing the right people. It simply says here that relational problems occur when one or both of the participants are unable to meet the realistic demands of a relationship. This usually is because they are emotionally undeveloped in certain areas. Now that we frame the problem, let's look at 4 principles that will help you choose the right person, be the right person, and develop healthy relationships. Number 1, connection. A relationship is first and foremost about emotional connection. Our attachments to others are called bonds, and they're created and maintained by someone's ability to share and connect from the heart, with all of its emotional vulnerabilities and tender feelings. When determining whether or not someone would be right to connect with, ask yourself these questions. Can they listen and empathize with your feelings and vulnerabilities? Can they share an emotional level? Do you go away from time to time with them feeling like you have connected? Or do you feel alone in the relationship? Look at this one. Is there a high level of assurance your bond will be protected? Do you feel that with the other person? Number 2, boundaries. Y'all know BTM loves some boundaries. We love some boundaries, my gosh. Another aspect of a healthy relationship is personal boundaries, okay? It says here that one way you can tell if someone respects your personal boundaries is whether you feel free to be in control of your own person and whether you feel invaded or controlled by the other person when you are with them. A healthy person will respect your wishes to be in control of yourself. They allow you to freely choose what you want to do or what you don't want to do without any pressure. Consider the following questions. Do they pressure you into spending too much of your time with them? Or can you say no to their wishes and still be accepted? There's some people out there that when you tell them no, all hell breaks loose. They can't respect your no. They don't respect you. While those people out there that even if you do something outside of what they wanted, they still can love you and be in relationship with you and respect you. Do they push in other areas such as physical area? Can they hear and respect your no when they push you further than you want to go? Oh yeah, sorry about that. Let me share my screen. Come out of this. Wait, am I out? Oh, no, I'm still on. Okay, good. Thank you so much. I almost forgot to share it. All right, so I'm on this page. This one's a little bit longer. Yeah, that's why. All right, so from current slide. Do they allow you freedom to have different opinions and wishes than they do? Or do you feel like you have to somehow be a clone of what they want you to be? Do you feel like your choices are respected, or do you feel like there's only one will in the relationship? My goodness, that's a deep one. And is it their way or the highway? You may have had to live with a parent that it was all about their way or the highway. But do you want to spend the rest of your life like that? You don't want to live in complete hell. You may know that name of the streets, but you're looking for something different now. So number 2 is boundaries. Number 3, perfectionism. Raise your hand if you're perfect. It says what? No hands? Even though some people think they do. No shake. That's because everyone makes mistakes. What matters in a relationship is how each person reacts to those mistakes. Another important area to consider is the way a relationship handles the imperfections of each partner. Is it okay for your partner? Is it okay for you to be imperfect, but yet you want your partner to be perfect? You may have to check yourself. In this world, we aren't going to be perfect or find a perfect person to love. Expecting yourself or your partner to be perfect is unrealistic. What is realistic is having a good understanding of how each person deals with the imperfections in their relationship. That's pretty good. So once again, we all have imperfections, but in that relationship with a person, how do you deal with your imperfections? Have you ever been in a relationship where you felt some pressure to be ideal or perfect? The fallout of that kind of relationship can be difficult at best and disastrous at you to be perfect. You can end up feeling like it is not okay to be yourself. Right? Some of us not only quote unquote die to our complete selves when we get baptized, some of us die to our complete selves when we end up in these romantic relationships. I see your body, but I don't know who I'm looking at. I just see another clone of the person next to them. In dating relationships, perfectionism can be displayed in the pressure to look or act a certain way so your partner will be happy with you. In friendships, it can be pressure to not make mistakes or let them down. So one of the things I would take from this slide is, does the person allow you to be human? Right? There's always a level of accountability that we will continue to have this creative tension when it comes to men and women that concerning. We'll all like be pushing each other in a good way. Not forcefully, but pushing each other to become better, that accountability. But do they hold space for your imperfections? Because they themselves are imperfect. And simply both of you ask the question, we know where our imperfections are, but here's how we can deal with those imperfections. Next one. Think about these questions. When you make a mistake, do you feel the freedom to confess to them that you failed? Are you free to be your total real self with your partner? Can you reveal your faults or parts of yourself that aren't so great? Are there image pressures in the relationship? Do you feel the pressure to appear to be something? Let me, somebody's unmuted. Hold on one second. Where is it coming from? Oh, wow. There it goes. Got it. All right. Are there image pressures in a relationship? Do you feel the pressure to appear to be something that you aren't and wish that you could just be yourself? It's impossible to be perfect, and it's important to learn from your mistakes so you can grow. Make sure you're in a relationship with someone who will support you through your mistakes. Chances are you will both learn and grow from them. Okay. Equality. The last quality we'll look at is the ability for significant others to see you as an equal in their relationship. By the way, that word helpmeet, okay, in Genesis, it means a supreme counterpart. A supreme counterpart. So when Adam is created and Eve comes onto the scene and God says, I'm going to create a helpmeet for her, right? That word in the Hebrew means a supreme counterpart. In fact, while doing some studies on Genesis, I love how the scholar puts it. He says that it wasn't that Adam was the greatest so much when he was created. It was more as Adam, we know you're great, but it's still incomplete. When Eve comes onto the scene, now it's complete. Okay, a supreme, an awesome counterpart. We're talking about equality here. Typical relationships often have a dynamic called one up, one down. One partner always has to be the boss in a relationship and is the self-appointed parent. They relate to the other primarily in terms of shoulds, telling them what they should or not do. This works well for a young child and a parent. But in adult friendships, dating relationships, and marriages, it fails if one partner is seen as worthy of respect. In short, it has to do with being dominated. Dominating relationships are very immature and lead to stunted emotional growth in both people. These relationships may be comfortable, but are more often miserable and extremely limiting. And being under the control of another person doesn't lead to intimacy. Trust me. Okay? When determining if your relationship has equality problems, consider these questions. Do you feel that the other person always has to be in the superior position? Mercy. Do you frequently feel like a child around them? Do you feel dominated and put down even in a nice way? And is there a judgmental quality to your relationship? These character issues help relationships last and grow. No matter how attractive someone is, how much we like them, if they have the character problems we just looked at, you are looking for trouble. All right. We're going to stop right there for today. And let me just do this. Yes, I want it.